Hey, and good morning. This morning we are here with Omuugn, and I'm really excited about today's conversation because we have a topic today that most leaders and most parents and every athlete that's ever been on the planet has had to face right in the eyes, and that is the concept of determination. Now, today we are reading from The Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn, and this is pages covering today, pages 160, what is it? 177 to 179, actually 180. And we have some ideas and some insights and some, I'm going to call it doctrine. The doctrine of determination. I think that's just a good title here. But we can't survive in our lives without determination. And so this is one of the topics that I was really excited about because as a 29-time marathon runner, I've had to have a lot of determination just to get through a single race. So I'm really excited today to talk to Omuugn and find out what determination is and how we might be able to use it in our lives to make us better people. So please help me welcome Omuugn. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And I'm using determination in every moment of today. Today was a day of determination for me. So timely topics.
Well, every day is a day that will bring out our determination and to determine how determined we are.
Well, determination is one of those skills that stacks on top of each other. And so you have other skills in life, and then you need determination to push you through some of the things that you're working on or some of the things that you're learning. And so I don't think it's a standalone topic. I think it's something that kind of builds with and around other topics.
Well, determination is, well, first of all, it's an inner strength. Um, it's associated with challenges and setbacks and trials because there are a lot of things that stop us from doing what we want to do. And determination is kind of that inner motivation that sometimes we call it willpower. Although determination is a little bit different than willpower, but they're almost synonymous. Determination pushes you a little bit further than willpower does over the long term. We've talked in some of our other classes about traits, and a lot of those traits are interwoven with determination. For example, our attitude. You can be determined with a really, really negative attitude. In fact, some people they get down just nitty gritty, and the more dire the situation, the more determined they become. It's almost like an ego battle or something. But when I think of determination, I think more of a positive attitude. You want your life to flow smoothly. You want your life to be enjoyable. You want your life to be successful. And those are all positive qualities. And so I would like to emphasize building determination around the positive qualities rather than the negative ones.
We just brought up an interesting point, and I work a lot in my business with people that specialize in procrastination, and they use determination as kind of an adrenaline high at the very last minute. I'm going to hurry and I'm going to do the test at the last minute. I'll pull an all-nighter and I'll make it happen. Or they have a deadline and they'll push themselves all the way up to the deadline, and then they start on the project the day before the deadline. Instead of saying, I've got 6 weeks, let me pace myself as I go. And I find that while their adrenaline might get them through, and sometimes they're really successful, sometimes they do a really great job at the last minute effort. But I find that there is an elevated level of stress, there's an elevated level of blood pressure. There's usually, I'm going to call it a fallout that kind of affects the people that are around them in an era of stress and anxiety and don't talk to me, I'm on a deadline and whatever. And so they're kind of, I don't know, being a jerk at that adrenaline moment where they're trying to pull through with determination. And so I see it as an opportunity, not just to focus on the positive, but also to pace yourself and to make sure that you do a better job and that you just don't turn in sloppy work and that you're not using determination just as I don't know, as an adrenaline high, if you will. I don't know that that's the answer. And so I love what you said about having there being a positive and a negative effect to it. So tell us a little bit more about how we can recognize in our lives when we're going to need determination so that we can build that into our program instead of just waiting until the last minute and then hoping miraculously that it just somehow appears.
Well, as I say, it ties in to a great degree with other traits and qualities of our character. For example, how do we make decisions? Like you were saying, if you have something coming up in 5 or 6 weeks, you would make the decision, like you say, to spread that work out, to do small steps at a time, to do whatever you needed to do to stay on track. You also have a moral character. You have different values that are part of your decision-making process. And when you're really sold on the process and on the final goal and the objective, it's easier to be determined and follow it through to the end. If you make decisions hastily, if you don't have a solid basis upon which to make your decisions and your choices, sometimes in the moment, you make the wrong choice or not the best choice. Sometimes there are two good things, but one is actually better that you would prefer than the other. So, scheduling yourself and utilizing time as an ally. I know that in our family, we had a big family. And so there were a lot of things going on all of the time. And when we knew that someone was coming over, everyone would scurry and everyone would do their jobs. It's job time. Let's everyone do your job. And and you tend to do that when people are coming over, when you know something is going to happen. That really shouldn't be your normal lifestyle. Your normal lifestyle should be to be organized and to have things in their proper place and be able to find things instead of spending a lot of your time looking for things. You want to work on projects, not looking for the tools to work on the project, those kinds of things. And if you can consistently do that, and consistency is one of the traits that we talked about, determination and consistency go hand in hand. If you're, for example, building quality habits, you don't have to make decisions over everything because you've put a habit into operation that enables you to work fluidly and you can maximize your efforts. You can even think about other projects sometimes while you're doing a project if it's habitual and you can do it well. So planning ahead, being organized, having the right attitude, and realizing that a lot of determination is about conflict and situations that you maybe struggle with. So if you have the clear objective in mind, when something comes up, I think one of the inspirational or insightful quotes in the book is that if you have a hard time, you can either choose to find a different way to go around it, to go over it, to create something new, something that would work. It's a conflict that you have to deal with a lot of times because most of our plans don't go optimally. It's not always plan A that's being implemented. Sometimes it's plan B, or somebody comes over unexpectedly, or you're asked to do something and you're scheduled to do something else and you have to make a choice. So there are a lot of things in play, but determination gives us that solid bedrock direction that we're going in, what we're going to accomplish over the long haul. A lot of immediate things happen, disruptions happen, challenges, circumstances happen, but the determination is that solidifying effect over the long term that enables us to reach our goal. For example, many years ago, I wrote a book. Well, it was a poem turned into a book. And I wrote a song, And it wasn't a consistent thing all the way through the years, but in several different ways, I've tried to bring that work to fruition. And so it has taken a kind of a determination. Sometimes we have things that are on the back burner, but they're on the burner and we need to do something with them. So determination will, over the long haul, we're able to bring projects about that are successful and we can see them to the end.
Tell
And
us
sometimes
about the book. Did you finally finish it?
I finally finished it, and it was published this week.
Let's see it.
Well, it's a book called The Giant. And I think you can see it. My daughter did the artwork in it, which is really, really quality artwork. She does a really, really good job. And it's been fun to work on a project and get other people involved. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that you just keep plugging along and plugging along. You have in mind what you want to accomplish. The goal is clear, but it hasn't happened yet. And so you keep pushing ahead. You keep doing the things that need to be done. And we had some tremendous publishers for the book. So thank you. Your company actually published it. And I think you did a magnanimous job. And so I was really, really pleased with it. But it's
Well,
just
thank you. I want to stop for just a second and say how proud I am of you. Number one, for creating the song, because even way back when, you took the song and you sang it to your children as you put them to sleep at night. So all of your children grew up with the lessons that were inside the song. Then second of all, you've taken the song and you've turned it now into a book that is available now for all of your grandchildren. And so when you're not there physically to sing them to sleep at night, this story can be read to them so they too can have the lessons. So I really want to commend you for that as well. And one of the things that I think is really key, and I want to highlight this so that it doesn't slip away, but you're talking about determination in terms of reaching your goals. And by having a specific foreman on the job that can oversee all of the details of the job, whether it's you yourself or it's someone else, that gives them the opportunity to delegate pieces of it. And this is what I'm hearing you say with the book. You delegated the artwork to one of your daughters. You delegated the publishing of it to a publishing company. And so what you did was you were the foreman of the job. You said, this is my project. I'm going to see it through to fruition. And so what that means is we need, and here's the checklist, we need artwork. We need, ad copy. We need marketing materials. We need publishing. We need all these things. And so by having a goal and then having a to-do list and then following the to-do list, and you didn't wait till the last minute, you were methodical about it. And I happen to know that you were managing this book along with other books that you're publishing. And so you were managing, like the foreman on the job, you were managing the details of these other books. And in the last 1 year, you've come up with 4 books, which I think is just absolutely amazing because you've been managing all the details and you've been delegating the different responsibilities. And so you don't have to do it all yourself. And I love the fact that you're bringing this up by having a goal and then the determination to follow it through. And sometimes that means you get other people involved. So good for you.
Yeah, a lot of different people have a lot of different qualities. And utilizing the qualities of other people is one of the secrets of life. So you can't do everything yourself all of the time. So it's really nice to have quality people around you that can really lend assistance. And another point, you kind of bring it out, but we all have dreams and desires to do things. Like how many people would want to learn a musical instrument or write a book? Almost everyone talks about writing a book. It's fun to do those long-term projects, but you need to see your dreams through to the end. If you let your dreams go, then you don't really have success in those areas of life that are really meaningful to you, for which you have passion and desire to do. So pursue your dreams. determination is sort of a spiritual quality. It's not located in our brain or in our physical body per se, but it's in who we are as a person, our individuality, what drives us, what keeps us moving ahead. It's a quality that comes from within. It's like being proactive instead of reactive. A lot of times things are happening to us all of the time and we just react to it. And if we create the scenario that we want to take place, we can be proactive and put those things in operation that will eventuate in the things that we prefer. So we need to be proactive rather than reactive.
Well, and you
And
bring
like,
up an interesting point because being determined, it doesn't always mean that you're going to come out on top. I know that there are a lot of times we put ourselves in the line of conflict by knowing that something we're going to do is going to create an overwhelm or it's going to be too much for us to handle or whatever. For example, writing a book. That's a huge project. And that's not just something that, oh, think I'll sit down this afternoon and write a book. It doesn't happen that way. It's going to be like this huge project, and there are going to be a whole lot of hours involved. There's going to be a lot of editing involved. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. There will be contracts. There will be this. There will be that. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff involved. So we know going into that it kind of like brace for impact. It's going to require a lot of determination and a lot of chutzpah and a lot of organization and a lot of probably negotiation between people and time and challenges and jobs and different things that we have going on in our lives to make something like that happen. And I know, for example, in my own personal life, and I don't know if this is genetic and this is just something that I inherited from you, but I mean, there are things that are in my life that I'm like, oh, that's a huge project. I'm totally going to take that on. And I start projects knowing that it's going to be this huge undertaking. And so it's going to require determination on every level. But sometimes I do this to myself. Did I inherit this from you?
apparently,
I heard you talking about wanting to create some raised garden beds, and you were going to create this new form of concrete with like a lighter weight material. And to me, it was like, whoa, that is a huge project.
well, it's a big project, and gardening itself is a good example of determination to plant things and take them all the way from the seed to harvesting the product at the end of the season. There's a lot of things involved in getting the soil just right, and watering and fertilizing and weeding and caring for your plants. That takes a determined, consistent effort for the entire season. If you want to learn a musical instrument, everything you want to accomplish is going to require time and it's going to require effort.
Mhm.
And so at some point, we need to prioritize our lives a little bit. What kind of time am I willing to put into this project? What time would be required for this project to be successful? And sometimes we have to realize that we can't just keep putting things on our plate.
Mhm.
We can't do everything, but we can do some things. And the things that we choose to do, we should do well. And we should be determined to follow it through to the end and reach our objective, whatever that might be. I'm a musician, and it requires a certain time and element to write songs and to master the instrument so that you can express yourself with the instrument. It requires practice, going over things, reviewing things, looking at things a different way, maybe changing the key, changing the tempo. I know at one time I wrote a Christmas song, and uh, it was kind of repetitive over and over and over again, the verses. And I never liked the way that it was really put together. And so I got with one of my sons, who's a professional musician, and we took a verse and we made it slow. And then the next verse was a real peppy, lively verse. And then it would go slow, and then it would go peppy and lively again. And just that that introduction of that new element made the song really nice, and I really enjoyed it after that. So if you have clarity in what you're trying to accomplish, and you're willing to put in the time and the effort to make it successful, and if you get the right people around you that have the talents and abilities to assist you, it's really a wonder what we can accomplish. And life
Well,
becomes just exciting. It's a challenge, you know.
well, one of the things that I love about you being a musician is you did not limit yourself to one musical instrument. Growing up, I saw you playing the keyboard and the guitar and the accordion and a little recorder that could also be considered a flute. And there were maracas and bongos and banjos and ukuleles and all different kinds of equipment that you introduced to us. And you would practice them while you were writing songs and you were singing us to sleep at night. And so you were kind of, I don't want to say multitasking, but you were putting us to bed and you were writing songs and music and you were practicing your musical instruments and you were entertaining us kind of all in the same space. And so I love the fact that you were willing to take what resources you had available to you, including time and musical instruments, and make the most of that with your determination. Because being a dad who is working full time, sometimes double shifts, and still come home and spend time with the family, that is not that. I mean, that is so far beyond what most people do. Most people come home and they just crash on the couch and they watch TV. But I found you were then utilizing all these different skills with the resources and the time that you had available to you. And I'm gonna consider that a huge determination because you were teaching us lessons in those songs as you were putting us to bed at night, singing to us. How you did it, I don't know.
Yeah, usually in the songs that I wrote, I tried to have a lesson incorporated in the song so that when you heard the song, you would just intrinsically absorb the message that I was trying to put across. So yeah, it was fun to do that. But we need to have a program, a plan, because there's so many things in life that can derail us. If we don't know where we're going, if we don't know what our values are, if we don't know how to make decisions, we can get sidetracked so easily, and our dreams go by the wayside, and we don't follow things through to the end, and we just don't find the success that we could have organizing our lives just a little differently. So everyone has challenges, everyone has circumstances. That's just part of life, and it takes some kind of a spiritual quality to push you through all of those kinds of things. As you look at something, you're either a participant or a spectator.
Mm.
And sometimes it's okay to be a spectator. If there weren't any spectators, there wouldn't be any reason for a lot of the games and things that go on. Why produce a program if there's no one to watch it? So there's a time to be a spectator, but there's a time to be a participant. And if you're a participant, you should be a good one and put all of your effort to be successful in that, if that's what you're going to do. I know with you, we've talked about it several times. You have an objective to go to the gym and to work out and to look at your health seriously. And that takes a determination. It takes time and effort. And you need to see clearly what you're trying to accomplish. And then it's easier to push through. Whereas if it's hit and miss, sometimes you fall by the wayside.
Speaking of that, it's interesting because for me, when I look at determination, I have to stack the deck in my favor because I am human and I'm kind of like everybody else. I like the easy route and not a lot of the things that I've chosen are the easy route. And so if I don't really focus, I'm going to fall by the wayside and I'm going to fall off the program within a couple of weeks. So for me, what I have to do is I have to go overboard. And this is going to be a weird concept, but I want to share it with you real quickly. I've run 29 marathons and they're 26.2 miles each. But for me to run 26 miles, that is overwhelming. That's just like huge. And 26 miles is kind of a long way to run anyway. But the very first marathon that I ever ran was a 50-mile race. Now, let me back up just a second. 26 miles is overwhelming to me. And so in order for me to do 26, my first marathon was an ultra. It was a 50-mile race. So I did 50 miles, but what happened is unconsciously I blew right past 26. 26, nothing. 50, whoa. All right, well, now that I've done the 50-mile race, every time after that that I went to do the 26-mile race, it was like, 26. Ha, I can do that. I've already done it before, right? So I had to go so far beyond what my goal was that when I came back and I did my average now is 26.2, which meant I could do marathon after marathon after marathon. No worries. I have already done 50, right? 50 miles was the big race. When I started intermittent fasting, I never thought that I could go 24 hours of fasting with no food. So the very first intermittent fasting that I did 72-hour fast. And I blew right past 24 hours. Nah, no problem. I blew right past 48 hours. No problem. At about 60 hours, I started going, whoa, I'm kind of getting like hungry and lightheaded, like, where's my food? Right. And so then whenever I went back to the 24 hours of fasting, no worries, I got this. Right. So I had to go so far beyond my goal that when I came back, my average was my goal, my real goal. And so there are things that I do in my own life. I'm kind of like tricking myself, if you will, because I am average and I am mediocre in most of my behaviors. But if I want to reach my goal, I have to say what is so far beyond my goal that is actually doable. And can I get there? And then when I come back from my regular routine of my 20 hours of fasting or 24 hours of fasting or a 26.2-mile race, it's like, no worries. I got this. And so just for my own determination, I have to go beyond in order to come back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point, and that is we all respond differently to different situations. So you have to figure out what works for you.
Hmm.
If that works for you, then that's a good process because it's something that you can actually plan on and you know how your system will relate to it. Where with others, maybe, like for me, if I was thinking in terms of a 50-mile marathon, that doesn't appeal to me at all.
Well,
And so,
somewhere in my head, there's the brink of insanity, and then there's possibility. And I like to kind of teeter right somewhere in the middle there of this is possible. And if I go a little bit further, then I'm just absolutely insane.
you have to find out what works. And it's kind of interesting that take a school class. In the school class, there are going to be A students and B students and C students and D students, and there are going to be failures.
Mm.
And if you look at any organization, you're going to find the A people, the B people, the C people, the D people, and those people that shouldn't be in the organization at all.
Mhm.
And so what is really the difference between those groups of people? Whether it's in the church, in the club, in the school, there's something inside of someone that says, I'm going to do this. And it might be a C effort.
Mhm.
And there are going to be students who say, I'm going to get an A in this class. Whatever it takes, I'm going to be one of the A students. Now, for some students, it's going to come easier. Some people have a natural aptitude for learning and memorizing and going through material. They can do it easily. And there are some students who are challenged. They might have dyslexia or some other hindrance. And so they're going to have to put forth a greater effort, a greater consistency, a greater time to accomplish the same thing. And so we're all different, and we need to look at our personal abilities and talents, skill sets, and then find a way to maximize those so that we're able to accomplish our goal. Uh, Whatever you're going to do, I think you should be an A student. If you're going to do it, be an A student. If you're going to have to do a job, do it with the right attitude. Don't do a job that you hate all the time. If you hate to do dishes, your challenge is to love to do dishes. Learn to love to do that. As you're doing some job that you don't like to do, say the dishes, think about what it would be like to be handicapped and not be able to do the dishes. What if you didn't have the use of your hands or your fingers? What if you only had one arm? What if you were handicapped in some way? You were in a wheelchair and you couldn't reach things. There's so many things to be grateful for. To be able to see is a wonderful blessing. And to not be able to see, if you were blind, but you could figure out a way to adjust to life and to maximize yourself, what a wonderful thing that is, that people have the determination to take something that's really challenging, like a physical handicap, and be able to follow things through and accomplish things in their situation. I mean, there's such a variety in how to be determined and how to be consistent and how to apply all of these characteristics that we talk about each week. So yeah, it's a wondrous challenge. Like you say, there's this area for you, it's that cutting edge of being in between those, what's really comfortable and what's really not comfortable. You're comfortable being not comfortable. Most people would like to stay in their comfort zone. But our growth, our development really takes place at the boundaries of our comfort zone or outside of our comfort zone. For
I think
example,
though, I think though part of growth and development is being outside your comfort zone, because you don't get to stay a toddler forever. There's going to be this weird, uncomfortable moment where suddenly you're going to grow up and you're going to become like a preteen. And that's really weird and uncomfortable. Oh, and then you're going to become a teenager. Oh, and that's also weird and uncomfortable. Then you're going to grow up to become an adult. Oh, that's weird and uncomfortable. Then maybe you have kids and you buy a house or something, and oh, that's weird and uncomfortable. It just keeps going. But everything that you do, if you learn it and you master those skills, then they build on top of each other. And you're like, whoa, I can be a great preteen because I was a great toddler. Now I can be a great teenager because I was a great preteen. And I can be a great adult because I was a great teenager. And as you build on top of each other, I think it removes a lot of the fear of life, because it's not just determination because you're reinventing the wheel at every step of the way. That's exhausting. But if you learn and you master the skill, when you go to the next situation of life, whatever that is, and life keeps presenting you with more challenges because you're supposed to have new skills, that now you're in a better position to do that, right? That's growth and development. And so if we will be determined to master this area of our life, whatever that is, that's going to put us in a better situation for whatever comes next.
yeah, and as you bring that up, I can't help but think of a lot of experiences that I've had in life. Uh, Back in the 50s, I don't want to age myself too much, but back in the 50s, life in America was really different than it is today.
Mm.
There were moral standards that were very rigid in, like, movies and entertainment. There were dress standards. There were vocabulary standards. And society is always changing. If you take the lengths of skirts, for example, it went from ground to ankle to mid calf to just below the knee to just above the knee to way above the knee. Uh, we're going through a process where our definition as a society, for example, modesty, has changed over the years. Society is changing. The world is changing, like you bring up. And not all of those changes are good. For example, if you look at the political spectrum today, one of the things I see advertised almost every day on the news is that we have two people running for president that no one wants either one of them to run, unless you're a diehard on one end or the other end of the spectrum. Our candidates are everyone almost, according to the news, wishes we had other candidates. Well, we do if we would choose other candidates.
Mhm.
The candidates don't tell us who we want. We should tell the candidates who we want. But we allow things to change in ways that we don't prefer because we're not determined to hold the line. For example, when I was growing up, I was exposed to some really foul language. And so I determined in my youth that I would not use that kind of language. I was exposed to alcohol and tobacco through some people that I knew. And I determined in my youth that I would never go the route of alcohol or tobacco. And when drugs became prevalent in the 60s and 70s, I determined that I would not get into the drug culture.
Oh, yeah,
And
you
so
were right in the middle of all that, weren't you?
I was in the middle of all of that.
Wow.
And
And you
so,
watched it go right on by. You didn't partake.
yeah. And I was in the military service. I've been working in steel mills and in places where I was surrounded by foul language and people of all different kinds of character, immoral people, people that were just base in how they communicated, in vulgarity and all those kinds of things. But because I had drawn a line in the sand and I said, I'm not going over this line, it was easy for me to not get involved in all of those things because I was determined to live the life that I prefer to live. And even when the children were young, I didn't allow them all to play their radio. They wanted to play their radios at night and listen to rock music was just coming in, this heavy metal stuff and grunge music and all kinds of things that I didn't relate to very well as a musician. And so we had a standard in our family of the kind of music that we would listen to, the kind of shows that we would watch on television, and how much television we could watch during the week. And we had sort of a program that worked for our family. And I never tried to impose that on anyone else, on any other family. That was just what I preferred for my own life and my own family.
What I hear you saying, though, and this is a really important thing that I want to highlight for a second so that it doesn't slip away. You had multiple children. And by having a standard of excellence that, hey, this is how I'm going to raise my family, what you worked off of then was a template. So you raised, here's the oldest child, and then the next child, you followed the same template, the same rules for watching television, for listening to music, for behaving, for doing jobs, all the things. But participated with the second child as they did with the first child. Then the third child came along and you followed the same template. And then the fourth child came along and then the same template. And so it was easy to run a household because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again without reinventing the wheel at each stop. And I think that's one of the keys and one of the secrets of determination. For example, when I ran a marathon, it was the same template. Oh, we're going to train for 52 weeks for this race, which is an entire year. And so what happens is you have a series of little runs that you do and you build up to bigger runs and you have other things that you do as far as eating and sleeping and carbs and pasta and all the different things, but it's a template. And once you've created the template, you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel over and over again. You just follow the template for the second race and the third race and the 29th race, right? It's a template that you do over and over again. Now, what's interesting is fast forward to the books that you've created. So we created a template. We've got to write the book or the song. We've got to create images and graphics. We've got to go through marketing and ad copy. And it's the same series of tasks. So instead of reinventing every project and having it be exhausting and overwhelming, which I think is one of the reasons why people are not so determined, because, oh, it's this overwhelming thing. Well, it is until you figure it out. And once you have a template in place, you can create 1, 2, 3, 4 books in 1 year. And so what I've seen you do, and you're leading us by example here, you are creating, here's the goal, here's the checklist that goes with the goal, here's the determination that goes with the checklist, with the goal, with the determination of the end result. And then it's a template, and we just create it over and over and over again, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel at every stop. That's beautiful and it's brilliant. That's working smart, not hard.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I agree with you. To the degree that templates work, I think they should be implemented. To the degree that we can create habits so that we have the same template for maybe doing things in a certain way that work for us. But at the same time, we need to realize, which takes us to a topic that we need to address, and that is relationships.
Mm.
Every person has their own belief system. They have a way of looking at the world that is unique to them.
Mm.
And so not everyone just fits in the same template. You have to be flexible enough with your template to interact with people in a way that is meaningful to them. For example, we learn differently. Some people can memorize very quickly, and other people can go over and over and over things, and memorizing is a real challenge. So maybe a person is visual, and if they can see something, it helps them learn. And some people have to go through the process of actually doing the project hands-on, and that's how they learn. Other people can watch other people do a project and say, I know how to do that now because I watched so-and-so do this. So we have a lot of different elements. I can't help but think, I bring this up all of the time, it's just kind of boggling to me. We have so many people getting married in our country, and yet almost half of those marriages fail.
Mm.
What a significant thing that is. If we're talking about determination, we should be determined to make our relationship successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are different qualities and characteristics. There are different ways that you can communicate and share back and forth, have an interchange with people that is meaningful, and look at things in the long-term success rather than gratification for the immediate circumstance, whatever that might be. A lot of marriages that I've seen, a lot of them are celebrities and they're on the news all the time. If someone wears a miniskirt, it's on the news. If someone gets a divorce, it's on the news. If someone is even quarreling with their mate, it's on the news. I mean, these celebrities their lives are just kind of open books for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like a lot of times, a lot of the marriages are short. Some people have been married 4, 5, 6, 7 times and just repeating the same thing. They have a template that is sort of a negative template. It's something that doesn't work and they keep doing it over and over and over again.
Well, and along with that, and I have to come back to the determination concept, because you've been married for this year 58 years, and that is a really long time to be married, and I would like to commend you for that. But I find in my short marriage, I've only been married for 22 years this year, and so 22 years, it requires determination, because while I have a template and this is how it's supposed to work, there are monkey wrenches that get thrown in. And one of the monkey wrenches we're dealing with right now is kind of an unspoken level of grief. My husband just lost his father a few weeks ago. I guess it's now been a couple of months ago. And the way that he's presenting himself is not something I prefer. And so I'm going to call it fussy. And I have to stop and realize that some of the things he's fussing at, it's not me. I didn't do anything to, you know, require or make the fussiness happen. So I don't take it personally, but I see this as maybe grief expressing itself. And so I'm determined to still stay married, and I'm still determined to try to work through the situation in the most loving, compassionate sort of way. But the templates that I've been using in the past just they're not working right now. And so it's like stacking my skills on top of each other. I have to dig deeper and say, hey, wait a second, I need to be more patient and more compassionate and more understanding and more communicative. And I need a different set of skills than the ones I'm using right now. Because what I'm receiving is not what I prefer. This ain't cool, as they say.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, and that is determination isn't necessarily being set in your way and doing everything the same all of the time.
Mhm.
Sometimes as things change, you have to adapt.
Mhm.
This is my end goal over here that I'm trying to accomplish, but I may have to change my path to get there. I may have to work around some obstacles as things happen that I haven't planned for. I need to be able to adapt and to be resilient. If this doesn't work, instead of quitting or stopping, I have to back up and go a different route and figure out a way to make this work. You can find a way or you can find an excuse. And determination tells me I'm going to find a way. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to fall down and just lie there. I'm going to get up and I'm going to continue until I'm successful. So adaptability, and we talked about common sense one week, where common sense isn't really too common at all, but we need to be able to make sound judgments. And to the degree that we understand how foundational principles and universal laws operate, if we can design our life to work in harmony with those things, everything is going to come out much, much better. So,
Well, so give me some advice because, like, right now in my head, there's a difference between what's happening in my head and what is actually coming out. So, what is coming out is this mature person that sits here and nods my head, and I say, I understand that this is a difficult time for you. And I understand that today might be a frustrating day for you. But in my head, I'm slamming doors and I'm screaming and I'm rolling my eyes and I'm doing things that teenagers do, like, whatever. I mean, all those things are happening in my head. And I'm looking at my fussy husband going, I understand this might be tough for you. And on the inside, I'm like, ah. So give me some advice. How do I get through from 22 years to 58 years? How do I bridge that gap?
well, it's interesting. I look at things as spaces and structures. And in every space, there's a structure. The structure can be a physical structure like the wall of a room,
Hmm.
or the structure can be a boundary or a habit or something that controls our behavior in some way. Like when we go out onto the road to drive, there are structures that tell us that we drive on this side of the road, we travel this speed, and this is where the road goes, and these are my options. And so we can design a structure, especially in a relationship. You can always say, is the relationship the way I prefer it to be? My end goal, I'm determined to succeed, is to have a happy marriage. So if I run against an obstacle, then I have to think, what could I do to change the structure in this space that would make it more preferable to me? And you'll always find that there's something that you can do. If you walk into a room, you look around and you say, I don't really like this room. I don't have a good vibe in here. What can I do in this room that would be more preferable to me? And you might change the color. You might change the texture of the drapes. You might have to replace the bed or the furniture or do something else. Maybe take the carpet out and make a hardwood floor or a tile floor or whatever you prefer. The secret is to, whenever you feel that you're moving in the wrong direction or that you're in a place that you don't prefer, energy is moving. Energy is always moving. And so if it's moving in the wrong direction, you have to change the direction that the energy is flowing. And the way you do that is to create a new structure in that space, or to, for example, if someone has a bad habit, well, let's say you have a bad habit. I don't want to have a bad habit. And so if I become aware that I have a bad habit, and maybe I don't know that I have a bad habit until someone that I'm living with says, what you do really bothers me. And sometimes we use hyperboles. We'll say, you always do this or you always do that. Well, we don't always do it, but we do it enough that it bothers people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we become aware of those things, we can adapt, we can change. My goal, my determination is to have a happy, successful relationship with my spouse, with my teenagers, with my young children, with my married children, with my grandchildren. There are all these different kinds of relationships that we have in our lives, whether it's an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or whoever it might be. We want to have successful relationships. And so I need to design something in my life that will enable me to have a successful relationship with this person, whoever it might be.
Well, with Pat, I brought up to Pat that he was being fussy and that I felt he was complaining a lot and that his attitude was very negative. And so he says, "So are you calling me NG Pat for negative Pat?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "So PT is positive Pat." And I said, "Okay." So then when he starts calling me on his way home from work, he'll say, "Hey, this is PT Pat calling." And I'm like, "Oh, good. Then I'll talk to PT Pat." This is the positive version of Pat instead of the negative version of Pat, because he's consciously aware now. And I really appreciate the fact that he's trying to pay attention, that when he approaches a conversation, I'm showing up as PT Pat, which is positive Pat, instead of the NG Pat, which is negative Pat. So we're trying to work through that, and I guess that's where you talk about rerouting the energy to an awareness. I think when we're aware, we have choices, and so I appreciate you bringing that up, because we're needing all the awareness right now we can muster to try to get through this grief period. If this is what this is, if this is just midlife, then whoa, this is something totally different. But if this is grief, then maybe this too shall pass.
Well, and it's ideal if you can actually sit down and talk with someone and communicate rationally.
Mhm.
A lot of people won't listen. And if you try to help them or give them input as to how you're feeling, they don't want to hear it. And it's very, very challenging to be around those kinds of people. It works out really, really well if two people can sit down and communicate back and forth and share their ideas and their feelings, and you can work things out. It's much easier to solve a problem. Sometimes there are people who have to solve the problem on their own. There are a lot of
Mhm.
single parents that there's nobody to really bounce their situation off of. If you're having trouble with a child and you're a single parent, sometimes you just have to dig down into that wellspring of your own spiritual construct and say, I want to have a successful relationship with my child. And so I'm going to have to figure out a way to restructure the space that we're in so that it's satisfying for both of us. The movement
Well,
of
and that
energy.
that that goes back to, though, I think, not just being a single parent responding to a child, but also being determined to make the relationship work. And
Sure.
sometimes not just digging into your own internal fortitude to try to make that work, but also working with a child. I remember being in a situation with Joanna where I had to travel with her, and she has some disabilities that I don't have the skills that match those disabilities. And so my frustration was, I am unarmed for the requirements that are put on me right now. And so I reached out to her. I said, "I've never done this before, and I've never traveled with somebody with your situation. So I'm going to lean on you to kind of guide me through this. Can you help me with this?" And she's like, "Well, sure." And so by letting her know, this is new for me, I'm uncomfortable, I don't have the proper skill set, but I want to make this work. Can you help me? I was then bringing her in on the determination of, we're going to get from point A to point B. And it was a traveling situation where we had to travel together. Can you help me with that? And she said, yes, absolutely. And so she was absolutely wonderful to work with through the entire day. And every time I had a question like, "Hey, what do I do now? How do I work with you in this situation? Or how do I work with you when I move you from point A to point B? Or how do I work with you to get you just through airport security when we've got some glitches here going on?" And it was interesting because every time I asked for her help, she rose to the occasion and she tried to help me help her. And so I think lots of single parents can work with their children instead of working alone to try to then move the child from point A to point B, whatever that is in their life that they're trying to help them grow through.
Yeah, it's really nice if you can communicate with people. Uh, in this particular instance that you're mentioning, Joanna has Down syndrome, and so she struggles with a lot of things in her life. And one of the things that I've tried to work with is that she'll take really big bites when she eats. Really big bites. I mean, it's scary almost. And if I mention that to her, she becomes very upset and defiant, and her whole demeanor changes. And so I had this insight one day, and I said, Joanna, I've noticed that I take bites that are too big. Would you help me remember to take small bites? And so it became her job to oversee me to make sure that I didn't take bites that were too big.
Mm.
And so it was a way of actually teaching her sort of in reverse. But we can always find a way. This is the point. We can always find a way to work around situations that need to be worked around. If something doesn't work, don't keep doing it over and over and over again. That doesn't work. Find a different way, find another technique, find another person to assist, or whatever it takes to change the situation that you would, so it would be what you would prefer. And people that are handicapped are they live in a special world. Whether you're confined to a wheelchair, or you're missing a part of your body, or part of your body doesn't work, or something like that. It takes everyone working together and finding ways to help and make that determination succeed in the very end, however you find to do that. A lot of things have to be taken into consideration. The attitude of a person, the personality of the person, the learning ability of the person, the belief system of the person. I mean, there are all kinds of variables. So we want to follow through and be successful in everything that we do, but we want to be on track and accomplish what we're trying to do. Really quickly, in our nation today, if you look at all of the situations with taxes and borders and the economy and inflation and all the things that are happening, there are people making decisions that are not determined for the best outcome. It almost seems like there are forces pushing people in a lot of different ways that we don't want to go in those directions. So we have to be determined to find people who are sensible, who have common sense, who will, instead of enriching themselves, if they will think of the people that they represent. We need to find good leaders to lead us in Congress and in our local governments and on our school boards. We need to be determined to maintain a quality of life and a standard that we want to experience in our country.
And I think that's even at a personal level where we talk about like compulsive shopping, for example. We have the ability right now, and society would suggest that, hey, just buy it online. It's available online and they'll drop ship it to you. And so, as a society, again, it goes back to what do we prefer? And we have to be really determined to say, hey, wait a second, I don't need this. I don't need to be buying stuff just because it's available and it's convenient. I don't need it. I don't use it. I don't need to just be buying stuff, right? So there are a lot of things that we need to pay attention to, and I think before we're determined, we have to be like you said, we've got to have a clear focus, and we have to have reasons for doing stuff, and then we have to have a goal for doing it, and then we have to hold ourselves accountable. And I think it's a whole entire program where, yes, it's our leaders. It starts at home, though. It starts at home. If we don't have a clear vision of where we are, we say without a vision, the people perish. If we don't have a clear vision of where we're headed, there's no way we can, vote in leaders that have a vision that's going to take us where we want to go if we don't even know where that is. We need to be so crystal clear about our own personal lives, about where we're headed, about our goals, about our vision, about our future.
Amen. Yeah, we need to determine what kind of a life we want to experience. And in our personal relationships, in our personal development, in our government officials, in our schools, every way you look at it, we need to create something that really reflects who we are, who we want to be, and we need to be determined to push whatever is necessary through until we succeed at the end.
I love this conversation, and I'm so sad that our time is up. We are reading today from The Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. This is book 1 of book 2. There are actually 2 copies available now, and this is volume 1 and volume 2. It's now available online, and every single week we are meeting with Omuugn to discuss the insights and wisdom of Omuugn, and next week we are talking about emotions. This is so good. Determination to emotions. So again, thank you so much for your time and your attention today. Thank you, Omuugn, for joining me and for having this conversation. And until we meet again, we will see you same time, same place next week when we discuss more insights and wisdom of Omuugn.
Thank you.